Hi there, this is Alvin, and welcome to the Kickstart Commerce podcast, where we share search marketing and domain investing strategies to help grow your business. In today's episode, our guest is Roman Edmond, a Six Sigma professional personal development coach and a decade-long part-time domain investor. Today, Roman and I discuss how early entrepreneurial roots, selling candy at school, flipping sports cars and Cabbage Patch Kids, and newspaper routes eventually led to his buying and selling domains. Roman candidly discusses outbounding domains as a door-to-door salesperson and how he went from owning 3 domains in 2011 to just over 10,000 domains in 2012. Yes, that's in less than 1 year. Roman also shares 2 secret questions that most domain investors fail to ask, yet these same questions led him to bulk sell a portfolio of over 1,000 domains. In addition, we contrast and compare strategies, platforms, pricing, appraisals, and varying factors to consider when bidding on and buying domains. Finally, Roman unveils his must-do rules and tenets when entering into the domain industry. And as a bonus, Roman also provides tips and tricks for buying and selling domains via Clubhouse. So with that, Roman, my man, welcome to the show, and thank you for making time to join us today.
Hey, thank you, Alvin. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much. Hey, man, to kick things off, Roman, let's briefly share at a high level with our listeners just a bit about yourself, who you are, your personal and professional background.
Sure. I was born and raised in New York, went to school in Buffalo. Then after that, I moved down to Mexico to learn international business, and then moved back to the States. And I have a strong background at that point in telecommunications, project management, done a lot of process improvement work. After that, I delved into the arena of project and program management, personal development. And I think in regards to me per se, I'm just a serial entrepreneur. I think ever since I was young, I had a knack for that. And so domaining is something that I love, and it kind of falls in line with some of the things I've enjoyed in the past as well.
Nice. So what's interesting, man, I was looking at your LinkedIn profile, and the thing that stuck out to me, 3 words, Six Sigma guy. And so I was like, okay, being in Six Sigma and knowing, I don't know if you know or not, but Michael Seiger obviously has a background in terms of Lean Six Sigma and having started isixsigma.com. So were you familiar with Mike?
Yeah, I'm definitely. I've been in the domain business for a while, since about 2011. And at the time, for me, the only area or place that I would be able to get good content in regards to that was Domain Sherpa, which Mike actually ran. And so I knew about his Six Sigma background and things of that nature. And in fact, we've had several conversations in the past in regards to that. So yeah.
That is awesome. I don't meet too many people because, and which I don't know if you knew. So I used to actually work for a company that's still actually in business called smartersolutions.com. And they were, at the time when I started working for them back in 2005. So shoot, man, it's like almost 25 years ago. Not quite, but getting close to it, or rather 20 years ago. What's interesting about that is that I knew Mike back then. And so that company, I did their marketing, their technology for at least 3 or 4 years. And they're still a customer of mine, still to this day, over the past 15 or so years. And so what was interesting was, obviously, I knew Mike in that arena in terms of the Six Sigma. And then it wasn't until 2011 that I got into a friend's car. They were playing one of the Domain Sherpa episodes, and it was like right there in the middle. And so, they hit play, and I'm like, man, that voice sounds really familiar. And then it was like, he did his signature laugh, and I was like, that's Michael Seiger. I know that voice. So that was one of the first things when I looked at your LinkedIn profile and I saw Six Sigma guy. I was like, okay, he likely knew Mike then before he got into domains.
Yeah. I hear you. That's actually, the world is so small. So that's actually a funny story.
Indeed. And so, man, how long have you been involved in domain investing? And I guess, where was this intersection at that you found yourself going, oh, domain investing? Okay. Hey, I think I can actually make a run at this.
Yeah, I would say at 2011. So at that point, I was doing some buying and flipping through eBay. I would find products and I would, either buy them on eBay or other areas, and then I would sell them. And I saw a listing that said domain names. And, I was familiar with domain names, but not so much. And so this individual was selling like 10 domain names for like $3. And so I just bought the domain names for $3 and said, okay, let me just start buying and selling them, I guess, or maybe figure something out. And a month later, I got an email from someone and they said, you own the domain bananacream.net. And I have a client that wants to purchase it. I'm like, okay. And they said, we'll pay you $500 for it. And I said, sold. Like, sold. They cut a check and they sent it through the mail, because I think back then, the whole digital type of payment system wasn't there or whatever. And then like 4 days later, I see a check for $500 and I cashed it and I sent them that bananacream.net that was part of that $3 package. And I'm like, whoa, this is going to work. That's how I got started.
Bananacream.net. Wow. I need to go look that up now to even see what's there.
Yeah.
That is crazy. So from a $3 lot purchase, then you go to a $500 lot. And then kind of what was your next step? I mean, now, had you known that there were like blogs, that there was Domain Sherpa, any of that stuff?
No.
Like, what was your next move?
Not at all. So I tried using, the internet, Yahoo, I think at the time, try to get more information. And I saw articles about some domains that, were being, sold for, pretty good amount. And at that point, I still didn't, I wasn't able to find a place where I'd be able to obtain information. But then I decided to sit down and take a notebook and started writing all these various search terms and names and ideas that I had. And then I manually went into GoDaddy to see if they were available. And then I started purchasing domains that way. And then, unfortunately, in my mind, I started buying like the .nets or .orgs. Like I would get excited if I would find like, I don't know, let's say baseball camp organization.org. And I would just purchase that because I'm thinking the .com is good. The .org has to be maybe at least 1/5 is good,
Right.
And I started amassing domains. But then at the same time, some of the domains that I was purchasing did make sense. And one of the big things that helped me was within eBay, it seemed like it came from Russia, because that's what it said, the Russian Federation. These guys were selling .nets or .orgs of pretty good one word keywords, like for like $20 and $50 or what have you. And then in my mind, I was like, okay, it would be like thechristian.org. And I'm like, okay, I'll buy it for $20. And then I started outbounding them to companies that would have, let's say, longer names than thechristian.org. It may be the Christian School of New York.com or, the christianschool.org. I would reach out to them and say, this is not the .com. So obviously I'm not going to, price it at $10,000. But if you're interested to do a slight upgrade, I can sell it to you. And I was selling them for anywhere between $250 and $1,000 immediately.
Now, do you have a background in sales?
I have an MBA in marketing and a bachelor's in marketing, but being in sales, I think that was ever since I was small, right? So the way I look at myself, I'm a fan of Gary Vee, and I have a similar kind of history where ever since I was young, at school, I used to buy candy at this local place for a penny each. And then I would bring it to the school and sell it to my classmates for 10 cents. And so I would eat half of it and make a profit. I would sell half of it, make a profit. Then I would eat some of it and then share it to friends as well as the girls that I liked. So like that was the beginning of my sales pitch. Seriously.
Oh, man. He was like, the girls I don't like, y'all get this, the crushed up candy.
Right.
But for that special one.
But that special one, yeah, and then I did newspaper routes and I bought baseball cards and started flipping them. I guess organically, I ended up picking up that sales background, always kind of looking for that next, how can I flip? and, monetize on the current thing that's hot, that
Right.
type of deal. Cabbage Patch Kids, I was able to make some money off of that. So I guess that's how my mind works. So when I saw the domain, it was an instant click. Started from banana cream, and then I ended up getting the additional domains and saying, okay, let me outbound and work with these individuals to provide them a product that does actually improve their business, and then I can also benefit. So it was a win-win situation across the board.
Interesting. Now, were you doing outbound in terms of, were you doing email, fax, making phone calls, or a combination of?
Yes, it was a hybrid approach. It would be emails as well as phone calls. And sometimes I actually went to their office if they were locally.
Really?
Yeah, for sure.
Really? Now, how would that work?
I actually would try to do research and find out who the either marketing person was, or if there was like the owner, and I would go in and say, "Hey, this is Roman Edmond. Can I have a second of your guys' time?" And most of the time I get kicked out, but then I would provide them a pamphlet. That was the key. I provide them some information, some like literature about the domain name, and then give almost like a can't resist offer on it, and say, "Hey, let me know. I can come back and I'll transfer you the domain, and you can give me the money back afterwards." So like it's no risk at all, right? So it's like better than escrow. Take your domain, you give me the dollars when you're available and ready.
Gotcha. And probably using the pamphlet, then I would imagine that they could then go off on their own, do research, look you up, and try to figure out, okay, is this a legit thing that's going on? And likely is the case. I mean, for a lot of folks, I know it's just a matter of when people, especially nowadays, probably wasn't so back then, but now we kind of question a little bit everything. When emails show up, it's like, is this really real? And then I don't want to click on the link.
Right. For
It's like, I
sure.
don't know what's going to happen. But versus going in person, it's kind of like, okay, well, yeah, the worst thing that can happen is they tell you no and you get kicked out.
Yes.
But
And
as long as you got that pamphlet in their hand, that
that's
was
the key. That's the key. And you're one step closer to those no's. You're one step closer to yeses, right?
Wow.
And back then, one of the things I did was I redirected the domain to their actual site. So that automatically provided the evidence that I own it.
Mm.
And then also psychologically, they could say, wow, okay, thechristian.org. Maybe, I see how it looks. Maybe for 300, 500 bucks, let's go. Let's do it.
Wow, that is phenomenal. And so then in terms of, so back then you were pretty much hand registering, like you hadn't even discovered there was a whole aftermarket or anything.
No, yeah, that was something totally like 2 years, 3 years later that I didn't realize. I didn't even know about being able to find a marketplace to actually put your domains for sale. So I was just kind of outbounding, and that's how I was churning them. I started with that 3 domains, sold one, and that was in 2011. By the end of 2012, I owned 10,000 domains.
Wait, what?
By the end of 2012, I owned 10,000 domains for sure.
How you go from like 3, really 2, because you sold 1 to 10,000 domains in less than a year and a half time, probably.
Everything that I actually sold, I reinvested into the company, right? I bought more domains. So when you're getting domains at like $10 a pop, sometimes you got to 5-for-1 deals. I would just continually do that. Basically, try to purchase anything that had any type of keyword or something that kind of made sense. That I was like, I'm gonna find a buyer. So I wasn't that strict and stuff. So that's kind of how that worked out. And then I actually started talking to individuals that had collect their portfolios that wanted to sell. So I would buy their domain, their portfolio. So maybe like $1,000 portfolio that I would buy.
So wait, this man, good Lord, you got so much going on right there.
Hey, it seems that way.
3 domains, you hand register, you haven't figured out about the aftermarket, but you're bulk purchasing portfolios. That doesn't even register to me. I'm like, okay, well, the hand registration part does, because I'm figuring and saying, okay, now that I know the key is that you were doing somewhat a hybrid approach of phone, email, and then in person. So that makes sense. I can see how your portfolio could probably spread on you, because you're finding businesses locally that probably have just atrocious domains.
Sure.
So you're walking in with your pamphlet, you're telling them this, and likely is the case. I mean, you're seeing the domain, you're going back doing your research, so you probably could register something that was even better than what they had.
Right.
Um, Go to them, you drop off the pamphlet, you get kicked out, you come back to them, you redirect it to them, they say, yeah, you work out a deal. But then now how do in all of that, how do you jump to actually buying portfolios of domains? That seems like a total different skill set, or am I wrong?
Well, yeah, you could say so. I think one of the key things is I like asking questions.
Ah,
So when I would sell certain domains to certain companies, I would ask them like, why'd you like it, or why are you purchasing it, and how many domains that you own. And some of them are like, I own 400. I'm like, well, what are you going to do with them? They're like, well, we were thinking about doing something earlier, but now nothing. So I was like, well, would you want to sell them? And they're like, yeah. And so that's how I ended up picking up some of these key domains that way, just by asking. And, they're like, yeah, our IT people told us to, purchase it back in the days because we were going to work in a project and have everything point to that. But right now, there's no reason for us to have it. So we could sell it to you because we have to pay renewals every year. And
and
so that's kind of how that happened.
and they sold it without really even knowing or thinking about the future.
Yeah, that's
That's
correct.
that's
Because that's
wild.
because that's not their that their circle of influence, that's not their
Right.
space, right? They're like, if they're selling cars, they're not experts in the whole digital space at that time, so they don't think that way unless they can find an ROI for particular products or activities. There's no reason to be carrying this valuable, to me, digital asset, and I'm sure now they're kicking themselves and what have you, but that was that was some of the things I always do. I try to ask the questions. And one of the things that also helped me is, and I think that's very important with folks that I don't see happen too much here currently in the industry, is when you do sell things to folks, you have to ask that question, what do you have? Are you interested in more? No one
Right.
usually says, are you interested in more? So there was this individual that actually purchased a domain from me. And afterwards, I asked them, hey, congratulations. Thank you for purchasing those domains. Would you be interested in any other domain? And he's like, yes.
Mm,
Yes. What do you have? And at the time, I had 1,000 domains. And I sent him the 1,000 domains. I said, let me know which ones you like. And he was like, he took his time. He looked at it or whatever. And then he was like, I'll buy them all. And he offered me X amount of dollars for my whole portfolio. And that's what changed me to allow me to get to 10,000 domains. That's the particular individual that helped that.
wow.
That
So
individual that
all
bought
in
it,
an instant then from
just like
that
that.
standpoint. Now, so prior to him purchasing those, I mean, what was your thought process? You were probably like, I mean, were you thinking he's going to purchase all of them, or were you thinking, he'll probably purchase a handful?
I was thinking if I could get him to buy 5 of them, that'd be good. Like, that's solid. Like, this is a game changer for me. I'm like, okay. Until he said he wanted to buy all 1,000, and how can I wire you the money? And I had to run to my bank to get the money wired. you know and so during this time now, I'm starting to get acclimated with some of the tools out there, and then I run into Domain Sherpa. So now I'm becoming more of a craftier domainer, right?
Ah,
Right. So I'm starting to find these little hacks. So for example, let's take Vegas Mechanics. Vegas Mechanics is not available, and the .net or .org may be available or not, but the Vegas Mechanics is available.
right.
So I would register the Vegas Mechanics, the this, the that, and I would go and sell it to folks. And they would buy it for like $300. You have the Vegas Mechanics, I'll give you $350, but that's the most I'm going to give you. Okay, hand registered, here
Yeah.
you go.
Yeah.
The
So
Vegas Florist, here you go. And it would be that. I was able to take the money I made from selling my portfolio to buy a whole bunch of like the X, Y, and Z.coms. And
wow.
that's what really started to increase, my whole like book of business, my revenue for the following year.
Wow. So then it became really about velocity of sales. So you could register some on a Monday and probably sell it in the same day, if not within the next couple of days.
Yes, that's what I was doing.
Wow. And then not only that, the upside to having a large portfolio as you had is likely that you're probably getting discount pricing too on your
Yes,
purchases. And
yes.
then you're able to, let's say you're purchasing for $8 a pop versus 15 or $20, and you turn it around, you sell it for that 350. I mean, that's not bad.
No, absolutely. At that point, I don't think they had like that GoDaddy VIP officially, but I had my own rep, and that would call, and if I'll ask him to renew stuff, he would renew stuff, and whatever I wanted, I was on that concierge back then. I
Wow.
guess there was some people, but I definitely was on that, and that was very helpful. You
Mm,
know, and so things were working well, and things of that nature. And then I started going to different industries. So I kind of separated and kept some domains, and I think I sold the rest. And then I went into different spaces. I went into doing more consulting, digital consulting. I went into fantasy sports
mm,
and some other venues, and kind of change things around. And
right.
then, as an entrepreneur, that's kind of what I do.
So then I guess the question obviously for most listeners is, so is Roman a full-time or a part-time domain investor? How do you qualify yourself? Classify.
I'm a part-time domainer if you're gonna put me in a box. But I think I'm a domainer. But if you're gonna ask me, hey, if I don't sell a domain for 2 months, is that gonna impact my livelihood or my day-to-day bills, whatever? The answer is no. So with that said, I'm a part-time domainer, and I kind of look at myself in regards to domaining in two phases. One was like the pre 2012 life or 2013, where I was that inexperienced guy that bought a lot of domains and was able to flip them and things of that nature. And then let's say the COVID domainer Roman, where I started amassing more higher end domains
uh,
and now thinking about investing and holding them for the long term.
Got it. Whereas the former, like you said, was really high volume.
It was high
Uh,
volume and it was by myself. And now I'm working with other domainers, collaborating and trying to do other things. So like my network has expanded during this time frame. And so now I can we have conversations, we can talk about trends, strategies, and that whole sort of thing. So I'm actually, looking at this more as a, end-to-end business. I think the strategy for people is to identify what type of domainer you want to be. If you want to
right.
be the quick flip, there's definitely a market for you, and you could kill it, because I killed it that way. I needed the money, I needed to do stuff so I can make $1,000 in 3 days by flipping 4 domains, and that works. And it still works. Or you can be someone that says, hey, you know what? I'm going to look for quality domains and I'm going to sit on them. And the value of domains are astronomically increasing day to day. That's a fact. And so you could do that and sit on them that way. And then there's there's another approach to say, you know what, let's kind of use this domain, let's leverage SEO, or let's build it out and create a full functional business. And that's something that I'm like working on now. And I'm starting to partner with various folks in different areas and different sectors. And I think that's something very helpful for some of the younger domainers or even older domainers, is to find out some of your better quality domains and then see who might be a subject matter expert in the arena and partner with them. My 2021 phrase is collaborate and execute. That's
Uh,
what it is.
Now that's actually good because I think in a lot of cases, most folks get that little glimmer in their eye about domain investing. I mean, I think you and I both, as well as others, have experienced it here recently with Clubhouse.
Yeah.
You get that little glimmer of somebody sold X for blank, and then it's just like off to the races. You're like, oh, it's the whole newness of it all and the excitement of it all that oftentimes, domain investors blindly enter in and jump in and think it's easy to do, and if anything, it's easy to lose a lot of money,
For
more
sure.
than it is to actually limit your risk and make money. I think that takes quite a lot of discipline to be able to do. And so that being said, now in terms of where you stand, so you're more of like a development or taking the development approach now. But I think in terms of, so you qualify or said, if I were to be put into a box, you said it would be likely a part-time domain investor. So I guess now outside of domain investing, what do you do? I'm assuming it's business coaching or something along that line.
Yeah. So again, like with the whole serial entrepreneur theme, I'm a personal development coach. So I have clients that I work with to try to 10x their lives. They may be struggling in certain areas, specifically financially, and I create a game plan, a strategy, plan of action, where we, come up with specific goals and then create the particular activities that need to happen in order for them to get what they need to be. I mean, in the last 4 or 5 years, I've been really more in tune with the personal development thing. Before I thought it was like, didn't mean anything. But you have those great folks like Tony Robbins and those sort
Right.
of people that really provide, some direction on creating a strategy to make your life better. So I do that. Then I also do consulting right now where there's these companies, a lot of them are like Fortune 500, Fortune 5,000 companies that actually request my experience and expertise to come in and do process work and project management.
Nice.
So they may have a project, even like a software rollout, that they need someone to come in and work with various folks around internationally. So they need someone to come in, kind of create that whole kickoff meeting, set up a game plan, a project schedule, make sure that they understand all the various components as well as the individuals that are going to be the project's going to be dependent on, and then kind of help manage it across the finish line. And so I do that as well as the process work. So a lot of companies are struggling right now, and so they're looking for someone to come in and kind of re-engineer their process because it is inefficient. So I do that as well. And then I also do fantasy sports. I'm pretty big in that, where the DraftKings FanDuel type of deal.
Yeah.
I do analysis work, and then I do articles, and I either market that to folks or I actually use it myself and I play that sort of thing. And I'm kind of successful in doing that as well.
So how in the world there's only 24 hours in a day, brother? Like how in the world does Roman manage to do all of those things or a subset of those things and domain investing? Like, how do you do it?
It's a system. At least for me, it was a system. So all the things that I've mentioned, I've spent like a phase of my life or time frame getting up to speed. So like for domain investing, I would spend like, let's say in 20, like in a week, let's say 90 hours kind of like consuming information, writing things down, creating a plan of what kind of domains I need to purchase, for how much and how am I going to flip them. And so once I kind of get to a point where I understand how it's, how this process is going to be, I can then kind of turnkey and move that forward. And then if it's going to be daily fantasy sports, I'm going to do the same thing. If it's going to be coaching, I need to set up my, website and then set up my contact list and then maybe hire someone to reach them out and then create a program that's kind of like a template that might be catered specifically to the individuals down the road, but it's a template. And so I'm able to kind of integrate those systems together, and it makes it much easier. It is still busy. I'm still like running on fumes sometimes. So, but I'm able to now regulate things. And it seems like I try to multitask. I don't really believe in multitasking because you kind of have to focus yourself on one thing, but I do that. So like I may be listening to domain folks on Clubhouse while I'm, writing down an action plan for a client and then looking at the sports ticker and seeing where I'm at, so I'll do that as well.
Man, that is interesting because, a lot of it is, and a lot of people have asked me like, okay, man, how is it that you produce content, you produce the podcast, and you manage to still domain invest? And it's pretty much what you said. I've become disciplined in doing the things that are definitely high priority, but high ROI, becoming consistent in those things. Most domain investors are consistently inconsistent in the wrong things.
Right.
So you got to turn that around And so, to a certain extent now, what percentage would you give yourself in terms of saying, hey, today I spend X percentage hand registering, or, X percentage purchasing from aftermarkets, or X percentage doing third party purchases?
I don't hand register
He's like,
anymore.
I left that behind.
No, yeah, no. I only do that every now and then when I actually see an opportunity to do that. So I think the last hand register I did dealt with these super refrigerators that the vaccines will be able to use. They're called freezer farms. So I own freezerfarms.com. I was sitting watching CNBC. Because I also do day trading at times, or swing trading as well. So I was watching that, and then they came up and they talked about these new freezer farms. And so I was like, oh, let me run and see if freezer farms available. And it was. And so I registered that, right? So I typically don't do that anymore. I usually spend a lot more time, I would say 80% of my domaining reaching out to third parties, right? So I've sold and bought, a good number of domains over the last year or so. And so what I typically do is I kind of reach out to some of the folks and say, hey, if you have any domains that's for sale or that you want to unload, send me the list. Let's see if we can do business. And so that's what I've been doing as of recently. And then, whenever I have an opportunity, I look at the closeout. Usually I'm on, some pretty good lists, like the domain smoke, which I think is awesome. Yeah. So I'll make myself available at 9:15 Eastern time AM, and I'm ready to jump in because there'll be the bargain bins, and then also look at some of the ones that are going to expire at the end of the day and see if there's any ones that might fit the profile that I'm looking for.
That's interesting. So then, have you been impacted? And I'm assuming that you're probably buying from more than one platform in terms of some of these closeouts and not. But have you been impacted by GoDaddy's recent change in terms of their pricing of the closeouts?
Well, yes, I guess impacted. So if you don't deal with GoDaddy, which is people far and few between, I would say yes. Then yeah. So yes, right. I think 95% of my domains reside with GoDaddy. And so if I've been impacted, I say yes. And I've been impacted in a positive light.
Oh, how so?
Because domains are more expensive. So that makes it more difficult for folks to go and buy them, I guess. Right. If I'm in a buying mode, people would just snatch them up for $12 or whatever the case may be. And now they have to second and third think, should I spend $50 on them? And I can, then I think it's preferable for me. So to me, it's an advantage. As well as they increase the price of domains in general, GoDaddy has done, to me, that it has also indirectly increased the value of everyone's portfolio, right? So for even a lousy domain is $50, that means to me that any domain I can purchase that's pretty decent for under $50, I'm going to snatch up. And then now I'm going to have to reconsider my drop, or the domains I would think about dropping and not renew, because now these domains are more valuable. That's the way that my mind works.
Now, and that makes total sense, because when I think about it, and some people have asked, because obviously, I have, and I've stated it before, I have access to the GoDaddy's API, their, previous API, not necessarily the new API, but I use the API to be able to bid on names. I just put names into a database, and the API, if I give it a strike price, certain value, and if it's that value, it purchases it. If not, if somebody else beats me to it, they beat me to it. But I'm just not around the clock. Yeah, go ahead.
And I use your list as well, because you have a great list as well. So I just want to add that to it. I want to put an amendment to what I said as well.
No, well, and it's crazy enough, because a lot of people okay, so you have a list, and I'm like, yeah, but I still look at Domain Chain, DSAD. Right. I look at Dennis's domainsmoke.com, and what's interesting is a lot of times I will use those lists and compare them. And so when I see a name that shows up on all three of our lists, I'm like, oh, that's probably a top-notch domain that if it doesn't have any bids, it's like, all right, I'll throw it in, and if it gets a bid, so bid, because I'm not probably going to be around to bid on it anyway. But if it doesn't and the API is able to snag it, perfect. To a certain extent, when it raised prices, I was like, man, I don't know that this is going to work. And then I loaded like 100 to 200 different domains, and I just watched them.
Okay.
And about 80% of the domains made it all the way to the price point of $30.
It did. Okay.
And then I noticed most of them disappeared by the time they got to 11. And so I was like, okay, so most people, my hypothesis, here's my thought about that, is that most people they were more comfortable buying it at that 30, which probably would have meant like 38. Because if you think about it, if they were purchasing at 11, that means that they were purchasing at 20. So, it's not 60.
Right.
But it's 40, but it's still within reach. And that may mean that they have to let 2 or 3 other domains go that they don't purchase, but they still get to purchase. So I was like, okay, I now kind of see the math behind it. Now for the bigger folks with the bots, the huge domains, that math still doesn't work out to me. I'm like, okay, I don't know that they're still purchasing at the same rate and level.
Yeah, I don't think so.
Because that gets, when you start looking at a $20 versus a $60 purchase and the number of domains being purchased, I'm like, man, y'all gonna go broke at some point. Like, you either have to start kicking up a lot more sales, or you're just gonna go broke trying to get all these different domains. Plus, they're bot bidding as well, which we all know. Like, I mean, domain prices have just, gone. I mean, if you think back to 2011, 2012, I'm like, man, I'd love to have some of those auction prices today. Sure. But today it's like, nah, I mean, for me, I don't even participate in the actual bidding anymore, just because you throw one bid in at 12, 17, next thing you know, this thing is like 300.
Yes. And so I hear you. I know that last year, 2019, I'm sure COVID had something to do with it. There would be more people at home, so that it would allow these particular domains to be bidded up higher.
Right.
That's one factor. Also, it's more of a digital landscape out there. That's another factor. But for me, in my mind, I'm thinking that it's going to go higher and higher. So my mission last year was just to acquire. So I was one of those knuckleheads that when you said it was bidding up to 300 and 400, I would do that, normally it would go for 100. And I'm like fighting these other folks. I'm like, I want to get mindsettraining.com. All right, $400. I own it. And like and I do personal development. Either I can now build a site under Mindset Training, or because it's my space, I know a lot of the key experts there and connections. So it makes sense to me to buy for 400, even though I think I should have bought it for 200, under normal conditions. 400 is fine as well if I sell it for 6 or 10, right? And I think that's what someone told me before. Like, if you're going to sell it for 6 or 10, is there a difference by, purchasing it for 2 or 4? If you are, obviously, you know what I mean?
Right. So let me ask you this, because that's an interesting standpoint. So in terms of with most of your domains, like, for instance, I know that I'm going to hold most of my domains at least 24 months, I'll say at least anywhere from 24 months to 36 months on average. Because I do know outbound, most of my sales are really, all of my sales are inbound inquiries that either I negotiate or it's just buy it now through Dan or through Afternic. Okay. That being said, for me, that's the I guess you'd say key business or performance indicator that I look at is like, okay, I purchased this domain on this date this year. How long did I hold it? 26 months. Well, that falls right there within the sweet spot. Now for you, like, do you have any metrics like that? Or is it, hey, yes, I know I'm going to overpay for this domain at 400, but I know that when I go to sell it, whether that's 3 years, 5 years, whatever, that time is, It's like looking at it and saying, okay, well, hey, like, what goes through your mind in terms of you? Like, how far because there has to be a point that you're going to be like, I'm not going to pay X amount for mine. It's like you paid the 400, but would you have paid the 1,000?
To me, and I'm going to be just as candid as possible. I'm not in that whole spreadsheet analysis and all that other stuff for domaining. So to me, it's a feel. It's a feel,
Right.
to be honest with you. But I look at my domains in two portfolios. One that I actually see that I get a good value, let's say closeouts or what have you, and then I'm going to outbound that and flip it easily, right? And then I have the ones that I'm like, I know they're worth, or I can get them to be sold for 10, 20,000. I'm rocking them. I'm holding them for a while, but
right.
It sometimes depends on my week. If I had a more successful week than others, then I might, pay a little bit more. But, to be honest on that regards, if it's an area in a sector that I really am keen on, like I know a lot about sports and I'm in the fantasy world. So if I find a fantasy related domain, I'm really going to be more apt to pay more. Personal development, I'm more apt to pay more. Cryptocurrency, I'm real apt to pay more. Other areas, I'll just let go because that's not my bailiwick. That's not my sphere of competence, right? I kind of use the whole Warren Buffett, Lou Garrett type deal. I kind of wait and see. For the higher price domains, it has to be in my area that I really have a good understanding that I can hold and feel comfortable. Else I won't. So I may pay more for those and be okay with it.
Gotcha. So then I guess is yours more of a keyword versus a brandable? You're probably more keyword focused than brandable, or
that's 100%. I do have a pretty decent brandable collection because it just makes sense. And some of the brandables are like unique people's last names, like from different countries or what have you. So I can still market to those folks, but there are brandables, like a Delaba, DELABA. That would be like a brandable, or at least it's on Brand Bucket or what have you.
right.
But it's someone's last name in Nigeria.
Okay.
So there's a slew of people that you can market to. And there's companies that in Nigeria and Switzerland that go by that name. So I can reach out to them whenever I want, if I want to pocket X, Y, and Z, from it, So the way I look at it too is with my outbound, I turn on the faucet when I want to and then turn it off. That's me personally. Like I don't do outbound all the time. In fact, this second go around again, like I said, now I don't really do outbound. I use my FD. I put all my stuff on FD, obviously Afternic, whatever, but my domain site resonates on FD, and then I get an inquiry. If not, I keep it moving. Maybe I wanted to go on vacation. I said I wanted to get a upgrade in a hotel or something. Maybe then I'll just say, let me go look at my domains that I can just and get an extra whatever couple grand so I can get an upgrade in my hotel or something. You know what I mean? That's how I work it sometimes.
Nice. So then like today, so like how many domains do you have in your portfolio today?
Well, I bought a lot in the last
You've been Clubhouse
10 days. In the last 10 days. So right now, probably closer to 400.
Okay. So not as many then as you once had.
No.
In terms of the 10,000. So you're managing a pretty lean portfolio then these days.
Very, very. I'm very happy with like pretty much the 450 that I have. It seems like going back, going the second round, I was able to sharpen my skills and pretty much get more quality domains. So when I part with them, I kind of begrudgingly give them up, based on the quality compared to, when I own 10,000 domains, I was like, hey, you want it here, take it.
Yeah, because you had renewals to cover.
Yes. And 10,000 domains, the renewals do the math.
He said that's a nice car.
Yes.
That is a nice sedan, luxury.
For sure. And so I also dabbled in crypto as well. And so in 2017, I kind of saw the light for Bitcoin. And so I invested in there. And I wrote articles, in fact, on LinkedIn. So you can actually go to my LinkedIn page and look at some of my articles that are dated in 2017 when I was begging my LinkedIn counterparts, jump in, please. There were 2,500 a coin. I said, it's 2,500 a coin. Get some, please. Unfortunately, you weren't my LinkedIn buddy at the time.
No, I wasn't. And I'm crying. I am crying. I'm laughing and I'm crying right now. I don't even want to look at what it is today, but somebody told me yesterday it was like 47,000. I'm like,
That's about right.
like, okay, that one hurts. That one hurts. Oh my goodness. And speaking of actually being ahead and looking ahead at things,
Sure.
like have you looked into any of this stuff about handshake domains?
No.
You gotta go take a look at it. You gotta
Yeah,
go take a
I'm
look at
looking
it.
into something else, even past handshake domains, but that's cool.
You gotta go take a look at it.
Okay, fair enough. Thank you.
It
Thank
it
you.
it is an interesting little concept that's going on. Will it take off? It may. Who knows? Who knows? It'll be Web 3.0 if it does.
Yes.
And it'll add an interesting little situation in terms of decentralized internet. Basically, Web 3.0, like I said, and actually adding different. It's almost along the same lines of the new GTLDs, with the exception that these are actually way more affordable. And obviously, like I said, it's decentralized
I'll,
internet. So it's
I'll
internet on a
take
blockchain.
I'll take a look at that, but like specifically for me, what I typically do is I go into like a sector or silo, let's say the
Hmm.
domain industry, and then I try to stick to the basics, and then I go look for a different space per
Ah,
se, like crypto and then leave, forex and then like get that knowledge and then focus on that. So like to me, .com is .com. So
right.
I'm riding with .com. There may be other things and I missed the boat. Like I missed the boat on .club and I'm okay with that. But I know if I can stick with .coms, I probably will be okay and not make a mistake. And then now
Right.
I'm looking at other areas and different spaces on other things that I'll keep to myself right now, but and then maybe I'll write an article on it at some point. But
Hey, well, next time you write that article about that 2,500 Bitcoin, like send it to your brother.
you got it. I got your back this time for sure, for sure.
So let me ask you
Mhm.
this then. In terms of your portfolio, now, do you list at any of the places? I heard you mention Brand Bucket, but do you do anything with Squad Help? I know you mentioned FD. Like, kind of what's the lay of the land in terms of how you use
Sure,
those platforms?
sure. I think like the thing that I would recommend everyone to do is that any free marketplace to try to list your domain. So I have my domains listed on Cedo. I have it listed on Afternic, GoDaddy, and the like. So any of those, my domains are listed. Dan, Epic,
Hmm.
So I do have my domains listed on all those marketplaces.
Now, how
And
do
then
you
every
go
now and
about
then,
pricing them?
how do I go pricing them? Okay. Typically, most of my domains, it depends on different phases, but most of the time I just don't even list them. I just have them there available. Give me your offer. And then if I do list them, I have maybe let's say I kind of gauge certain domains, but then I guess I use some of the tools out there like Estabot and GoDaddy, and then I kind of look specifically on the domains that I really want. I spend more time in looking at, let's say, potential search volume for the keywords, and then I'll look and see how many other domain extensions are taken. Are there any nice domain sites built on, let's say, a .net or .org, and then I can get a better feel of stuff. Also for the and that would be maybe for my higher end domains. The other domains I kind of look at it. Hey, if I get it, let's say for close out of 50, based on the sell through rate and stuff like that, what should I, possibly price it at? And so that's kind of maybe how I price them out, those type of domains. And then I may have a minimum that we can negotiate. But I'm still struggling with that. So that's something that for me, when I look at my overall, what's my strengths and weaknesses within the domain arena, that's something I still struggle because I do, at least a lot of people say I do sell my domains underpriced,
Mm.
but there's velocities there. They're like, wow, you left a lot of money on the table. And I'm like, well, I was able to eat and I'm not starving. And so I'm allowing other people to fill their tummy up as well, right? You got that big pizza pie. I'll
Yeah.
take 4 slices and I'll give I'll let everyone else take one or two.
I think that's the glimmer in everyone's eye, or can be the glimmer in the eye, is the stories of the Rick Schwartz. of the multi-million dollar domains. But it's like,
Sure.
okay, well, wait. Yes, he had great domains, but he's also been holding on to them for, 2.5 decades.
That's
He
right.
just didn't pick it up on Monday and it became this, multi-million dollar thing. And he had the guts to say no or not respond or be Rick Schwartz and be Rick Schwartz in terms of some of his responses. But that being said, there are times, and I think here, Hidden Patel, he said it best when he said, either I'm going to book my profit today, or I'm going to take a chance later, but that chance later may not be as greater than now. And so you just have to realize and say, is this the best offer that's going to come for this given domain in the moment? And with what I know about everything, do we make that, do we make that sell? Do we book that profit now? I operate under that kind of that same premise.
Right.
It's like I receive an inbound quote, and if I don't like it, I don't like it. But
Gotcha.
I quote them a price, and in some cases I may quote a price, and then if they don't respond or they let it expire, especially if it's on Dan, I can go back and I'm like, you know what, I may discount that 20-25% and put a buy now on it. And if they
Okay.
purchase it, they
Okay.
purchase it. But if not, then in 60 days, it's like
Yeah.
I may swing the whole different, pendulum in terms of if I list something at 3,000, originally I dropped it down to 2,500, I may lift it up to 4,500. And I've had
Listen,
domains sell
what
like that.
whatever works, and I agree with you here. I think everyone has their own unique style. Everyone has their own circumstances, right? So
Definitely.
when I told you I started in 2011 and doing domaining, my situation was totally different. I was like, I had a good job and I was doing stuff, but I wasn't as out there with all the various projects that I was working on. So domaining was definitely something hey, I can augment and kind of like, use that money to do certain things for lifestyles for my family and stuff like
Right.
that. Subsequently, afterwards, things have totally changed for even the way better.
Hmm.
I've been blessed. And so now it's a different perspective. It's like, I don't need to do the quote unquote hit and run, buy a domain and then, sell it, what have you. I can hold it, but my
Yeah.
circumstances is different than yours. So that's the reason why my strategy could be different than yours.
Right.
I do believe there's basic premise that should happen. And so I know there's going to be a lot of new domainers that's going to be listening to this. So here's some of my Roman tenets, rules, right, for domaining, right? And you guys can take it as you will. In my opinion, rule number one is do not buy domains, any of them, until 8 weeks after you start in the business. 8 weeks, why? I just do 8 weeks. But because so number two, you need to do and spend the due diligence, doing research, reviewing all the podcasts like the one you have, Alvin, all the books, all the blogs. Go on Twitter, find all the domainers, become their friends, get up to speed as quickly as possible. Number three, do not hand register any domains for 28 weeks. Why 28 weeks? Because it's half a year.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That is awesome. Hey, if they're listen, I don't care about the first one, but this one right there, that's going to save you a lot of heartache.
It is going to save you a lot of heartache. And so,
Oh my
yes,
goodness.
28 weeks, right? I might say a whole year or however long it takes to birth a child might be even better. It's over a year. I think it's like 63 weeks or something like that. That would probably be better. And so during that time frame, when you do decide to purchase a domain, my recommendation would then be go to like a GoDaddy auction or what have you and purchase a domain there. Why? Because one thing's for sure, that domain at some point, someone actually thought about it and it made sense for them to register.
Mm-hmm.
The hand register is not necessarily the case. You may have been the only person that thought about it, unless it expired and then went back into the fill, and no one purchased it anyway before you. So that's even worse.
Right.
So, right. So that's even worse. So I would say that would be a good rule of thumb. Another rule: stick with .coms. Don't get fancy swancy. Stick with .coms, no .nets, no .us. No .cc's, no .clubs, no .x, y, and z. Stick with .coms in the beginning. I think that would be very helpful. And that's Roman's tenets, rules and tenets.
He said, I got 3 simple rules that'll get you started on the way. Because that was going to be my next question about whether or not you invest in CCTLDs or just alternative extensions.
I do have some, but I would say you would probably cover maybe 10% of my portfolio per se. And they're pretty dynamite ones in my mind. And those particular domains, I actually specifically are looking to build out, right? Like I own I think hack.tv, polyglot.tv. Polyglot is someone that speaks like 4 languages. So I'm going to build out a language.
Like Morgan Linton.
Yeah, or like me.
Oh, you too.
Yeah. I speak English, French, Spanish, Russian, and some other language, Haitian Creole and stuff like that. So yeah. And I learned Russian like 2 years ago because I used to go to a spa and everybody there spoke Russian. And I got angry about that. So I said, you know what? Let me create a game plan and a strategy on learning Russian. And so I created a timeline and the activities I needed to do. So I purchased some CDs because my car still accepts CDs. CDs on eBay on Russian. So as I commute, I can listen to that. I then found a podcast that taught you how to speak Russian and exchange. I ended up finding a couple of people I ended up able to speak Russian to. And then I started watching on like Netflix Russian movies. That's how it worked out.
Well, and that was what I was going to ask. I'm like, okay, why so many languages? I'm assuming that you probably had life instances that required them.
Yeah. Again, I actually, when I finished my bachelor's, then I went for my MBA, and then there was an opportunity to go to one of the top schools in Mexico for international business / marketing. So I ended up moving to Mexico at 20 something years old and living there and going to school, MBA program. And I didn't speak any Spanish before that. So that was the interesting thing. That was probably to me one of my better accomplishments because I didn't speak Spanish at the time. And school started in August and I went there in May. And then I took a 40-hour 8-week course in Spanish, and I stayed with a host family. And I did that for 8 weeks. And then after 8 weeks, I decided to go backpacking throughout Mexico until school started. And by doing that, I got to meet the taxi drivers, the maids, the grocery store attendant, and be able to exchange with them. And so when school started, I think I had a decent level of Spanish to deal with the classes to some degree. However, a lot of my classes had to do with presentation. So I had to go up and do presentations. And boy, the first several of them were crazy hilarious. Like the teacher was trying to hold back from laughing. The classmates were covering up their mouths. And, I did a terrible job, I guess, saying I would imagine the weirdest things. And then after the end of like the first year, I ended up being, like a typical Spanish speaker. So you could see the progression. But I thought that was one of my better accomplishments in my life, to be honest with you.
Oh, man, I'm laughing because you made me think back to the movie Blue Streak with Martin Lawrence.
Okay.
And the scene at the end to where I want to say they were at the border. The Mexico border, and he's all about the federales, and he yells out something like "Muy gato pantalones," and the guy goes, "Hey man, do you realize what you just said?" And Martin doesn't know what he says, and they put the caption there, and it's like a big cat in your pants. And that's what I could only
the translation
seeing you give a presentation. There's no telling what you said. You thought you said one thing,
right?
But to those who knew, they were like, "Oh, really? Oh,
right.
Okay, all right." But that being said, it's a very immersive experience in terms of learning another language, and to a certain extent, sometimes you have to get in there. Like I was thinking back to what was it? We have friends who registered or actually enrolled their kids in terms of learning another language. And they were talking about just how it's the theory versus the application. And sometimes within the application, they're speaking different dialect.
Yes.
And so it's like, speaking English and Ebonics. Um,
That's
and,
exactly right.
and that can be that different. And so if you're enter into a situation and you're using the theory of dialect versus the actual application of a given region or a dialect of a given region, then you get the strange looks and like, oh, you're not from around here, huh?
No, right, right.
Not.
Absolutely, for
That is
sure.
awesome. That is awesome. Now, do you invest in multilingual domains or no?
Not really.
Yeah.
What I have done is I do hand register them for sure. Now that I think about it, I do travel, and even in the last year, months, I've been, I travel, and so when I do go to new areas, they have slang that they talk
Ah,
about, and I pick up some of them. A lot of them are like curse words or like those type of deals, and I picked them up for whatever reason they're available because I think there may be new trending words
mm,
and people that do domains haven't like put everything together.
ah.
So that's why I picked them up. I spoke to one fellow domainer and I told her the word, a couple words that I had, and she was like fascinated, like, oh my goodness, because she's from certain, Spanish speaking countries, for example. And she's like, how'd you get that? And I was like, well, it was available. She's like, no, it's not, and so I have picked up some, but that's not something that I would look to specialize in at this point.
Right, right. And I was about to add to that because I remember looking through Spanish domains, and I was surprised at the number of words that were available. But then it also, obviously, my Spanish is limited. And if you're trying to use things like Google Translate to where you translate the English word into whatever the language is, it's like, while that is possible from a domain investing standpoint, don't go do that. Like,
No,
because it could certainly not work out well for you in terms of you trying to approach a business and you're like, I've got AC repair, and it's like, yeah, that says hurricane alerts though. You're like, oh, I didn't know. Um,
exactly. And
but
certain
yeah,
countries use certain words for like the
true.
English translation. So that's totally different. And then I would say the reason I wouldn't go there as well is it depends on the language and the country you're trying to market to. They may
Hmm.
not use .com as their number one choice.
That is true.
And that's why you probably find them available so much because they don't use .com.
Right,
Right.
right. Definitely. It makes me think of what was it, the Chevy Nova?
Mm.
When they took
No
it and
Fuego or
yeah,
Nova? Nova.
yeah,
Yeah, Nova. Don't go.
yeah, don't
That's what it
go.
means. That means don't go, right?
Yeah, and so they took it to the market in Mexico, and no one bought the car. And they couldn't figure out
And they're
why.
wondering why. Because the translation means no go, Nova.
Yeah, and why would
Ah,
I buy a car that that won't go? Like, no, 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 no. So yeah, man, it is a interesting experience. And so, man, hey, one last thing here in regards of something that's hit the domain investing community, taking it really by surprise, which is Clubhouse. Now
okay.
you've been on Clubhouse. I've been on Clubhouse. Like, what do you make of it? What's been the some of the things that you've seen that have made you actually quite excited about just its use and where it's going in terms of the domain industry?
Well, if you ask me that part, I would say I love the diversity of the people that I see in these rooms, right? From
Right.
all different types of ages and ethnicities and occupations, professions, level of education. I was astounded that people even have interest in domains. I thought it was just us geeks. So that was very refreshing to see. Absolutely. And I think that if we can educate these guys and motivate them and they can tell their friends and bring them in, wow, this can be some positive, this could be a golden era moment for the
Right.
domainers, right?
Right. And I echo the same sentiment. It has been a breath of fresh air to see folks
Mhm.
in, and obviously with everything good comes the bad.
Yeah.
And so then there are things that, it's like, man, I really hope we turn the corner, and I know that we will turn the corner given the fact of renewals will come knocking at some point. And so for some of these folks that got in early, that got excited, that just started buying different domains, whether it was .club, whether it was .com, I believe that there are moments where folks have had an epiphany and have come to their moment of reckoning of like, oh shoot, I dropped X amount of money in this, and now these are really worthless. And so to a certain extent, it's kind of like, that's been the bad of it when you have conversations with folks and you look at their profile on Clubhouse and you're like, yeah, I hate to tell you, all of these are really of no value. If they were .coms, maybe they would have been, but it's been interesting to have to come alongside and educate. But at the same time, I'm encouraged because there are so many who are open to receiving the feedback and actually making changes. So that'll just, it'll be interesting to see what happens when Clubhouse, especially once Clubhouse opens up to Android users as well. So there's likely going to be even an additional influx, I would imagine, of new people as well.
No, I agree with you. One of the things I say, especially with domaining and some other businesses or, potential projects, the barrier entry is very low. And then that allows everyone or folks that may not be equipped to jump in and do business, right? So it's different than, purchasing or trading options, right? Where if you're trading options, there's a minimum that you need to have in your account, the actual option account. You need to kind of specify how much your net worth is. There's some things that you have to check off and sign that that you're okay and all that other stuff. Where like when you jump into something like with domain, it's like have $8 and a computer, and now like so-called you're a domainer, right? And so that barrier to entry is so low that folks sometimes do not take the due diligence prior to moving forward, and that's what I want people to do. One thing I would say as well is, even though like you and me are like competitors on the domain landscape, we still, care about each other, just like any other fellow domainer. And so for new people, reach out to domainers, ask them questions, the veterans. We're not going to hold back and, not tell you stuff for sure. I mean, we've made numerous mistakes. I make mistakes still to this day. But if, if you want some insight, we will be open to, have insight. For me, you just hit me up on Twitter or whatever, and, I'll definitely do my best to answer.
Yeah. And what is your Twitter handle, speaking of?
Yeah, if I recall, it's Roman Edmond 1. So Roman Edmond 1 is my Twitter handle.
And that's it. And then I think you're on LinkedIn as well, right?
I am on LinkedIn. Yeah. So definitely. Let's become connections. Hit me up on the Roman Edmond on LinkedIn. I'll accept. I'm a lion, as they say, LinkedIn open networker. That means I accept and won't reject you. So, you didn't know that, huh?
I never heard that before. A LinkedIn open network. Yeah, I was like, man, I said, boy, that was pretty smooth on the fly right there. But
that wasn't me. No. I'm just leveraging something I know.
No, that is awesome, man. That is awesome. And I think but you hit on the key point there about the industry. I think as much as things are so focused on at times about the domain, about the value behind the domain, the true value is really in the relationships amongst one another. I mean, that's because, and there have been so many times, and you and I, we both joined the domain social every Friday. And that has been, an area almost like Clubhouse. It's been refreshing in terms of just ideation and just hearing different thoughts and approaches and viewpoints that have either helped us to course correct or even help us wander into new areas or try different things. And it's been, like I said, not necessarily about those things as much as it's been really about the relationships of when I see someone's profile picture, I've heard them speak, I've had a connection with them, I know who they are at a personal level, and that makes it all the better, all the different.
That's why we're cool, right? Based on that.
Exactly.
Right? That's how that happened, right?
Exactly.
That's how that energy happened. So for sure, and I could tell you during my second stint on the domain world, I became more involved, right? I've been more engaged, collaborate, share, understand what the pain points are for the community, try to help out, And
Right.
so it's wonderful. Like I now, like, for example, what you mentioned, the domain social, that's something that's part of my Friday schedule. Right.
Right.
And I'm like, oh yeah, I think we have to, I don't even need to see the email. My mind already totally clicks because I've made friends, I've made these relationships, and I've learned a lot of things even outside of domaining that I was able to leverage,
Right.
in my day-to-day work. So I'm happy with this industry. I love this industry. I think it has a lot of legs on it. I think the sky's the limit, and now we're getting more people. So I just say that, like, just try to treat each other the best, respectful, try to not throw our laundry out on the street, if you can. And
Don't throw the laundry, don't throw the bath water, and certainly
yeah,
don't throw the baby out there.
no, yeah. And I think this really could be great. This really could be great.
Yeah, definitely, man. And so, wrapping up, one of the things that I wanted to highlight. So, everybody's heard about this whole Clubhouse auction bit. Now,
Okay.
you have been one of the ones who has been successful. You've actually had a couple names to sell, right?
Yeah.
So, like, what would be the key for you in terms of bringing names to a Clubhouse auction? Like, what
Sure.
would be your roles for someone that's listening to this and they're going to go on Clubhouse and it's going to be inevitable? They get the invite, they get in, they get to
Gotcha.
the auction and they want to come out. Like, what are Roman's rules in terms of, hey, here's what you need to consider when thinking about submitting your name to the Clubhouse auction or any auction?
Oh, the tenets of Roman, right? Let's see if we can find. Let's see if we can find three. Number one, number one, I think would be helpful is to go to wherever that community is, that room or what have you, and understand the various people prior to submitting a domain. I think it's very important to understand, and I think that for all auctions and areas that we have these type of domain auctions, is a lot of times you may have a good domain. You may have like plumbers.com, let's just but if we're all tech folks, that may be good, but if we're really truly going to
Right,
buy domains,
right,
we're thinking, how are we going to sell it? Plumbers.com, obviously, you can easily sell, but something like that, like Austin Plumbers. If
right.
we're all tech folks, that's not going to really sell. So you're not going to get a good price for that. I might say I'll take a stab and buy for whatever, $40, knowing that, hey, if it doesn't work out, that I'm okay. As
Yeah,
opposed to if you had, let's say, let's say a more technology, a technical component to it and for that market, you could probably get folks to say, you know what, I can build on it. I can know someone that can build on it. I
right.
can easily flip it. So that's like rule number one. Rule number two is you probably have like your first submission probably should be like your best submission, right? Like you want to first of all, build that positive momentum of selling something. Number two, people are watching and people remember when you provided maybe not the best domain versus a good domain. So I think that has some relevance, right? Number three, be careful on your reserve, right? So everybody, a lot of people want to put reserves on their domains. I typically don't, but that's okay. But you have to be reasonable, right? So if you have a domain that maybe in the end user market is worth $3,000, you can't closely think that you should have a reserve or that it's going to sell for anywhere close to $3,000.
Mm,
Remember, if we're doing auctions over here, it's like wholesale, me selling to Alvin.
yeah,
So, and Alvin's going to have to try to sell it to maybe another domainer or maybe the end user.
right.
So if
Might
it's
have to knock a zero off of there.
right. So yeah, so that might be fair. Like, you'll say 300, you purchase a domain for 50, you say 300 as your reserve. And if it gets to 300 and you sell, you make 6x.
Yeah.
This is the only industry in the whole universe that I know of that if you get a 6x return, you're labeled a failure and a bum. No other place that I know that you get 6x. If you're in a stock market and you get 10%, 12%, 15%, I think you'll have a fund, a mutual fund forever. If you can get 15% annually, But you get 6x in the domain market, and people are just, and obviously there's other components because of sell-through rate and all that other stuff. But the idea there is, $50, sell it for $300 or somewhere else. That's cool. But if it's worth $3,000, you can't say my reserve is $1,800, which I hear a lot, And so that would be my third rule for sure.
Oh man, Roman and I have heard a bunch of stuff in Clubhouse. The good, the bad, and the downright ugly. There was a name that shall go unnamed, but I remember someone said, what's the reserve price? Somebody said 8,000. He said, what? He said 8,000. I was like,
$8?
Yeah.
I think he said $8,000. And they were like, no, 8,000. And I think some of the auction people had to hold back from laughing, but you can kind of tell they're like, what the, it's like someone like me going and registering yesterday, Roman is the best of the world, .club, and saying my reserve is 8,000 with a straight face. And then they're like, are you willing to negotiate down? And they said, no. That's what happened.
Oh,
I've seen it myself,
and it's that awkward silence. And I tell people, I'm like, if you get that awkward silence, it's not because somebody is speaking on mute. They're speaking on mute, but you won't hear it. I'm like, no, if you get the awkward cricket silence, that should be your telltale sign. Yeah. And so I think all of those 3 points are great. One, just knowing your audience. And then two, obviously matching the domain with the audience. And then also really matching the reserve with the domain with the audience. And it's like you do those 3 things and do them well. You are well positioned for success. Like you've been. I mean, you've had a couple of sales that have definitely, helped you to turn a handsome profit, to say the least.
Yeah.
And so it's knowing, it's not coming in, hitting for the fences and trying to hit the home run. Work the singles, work the singles.
Especially when you start off, work the singles. That would be best. And there may be a strategy of working the singles into doubles to triples to home runs. So,
exactly.
You have 5 good singles, you could build and buy a double domain. Yep. And then build that way, because not everyone can just go in their pocket and purchase $1,000 domain.
Right.
Less a 10,000 domain, but I could make 5, like how we were making fun of that 6X. I could make $300 in that domain and do it 10 times. And now I can get a nice domain for 3,000. And that 3,000 domain that I spent can be sold. Like you can find a domain that may go 6X, which is what, 20 grand, 30 grand. And now you're rolling. It takes one of those and you're rolling.
Exactly. Well, with that, Roman, we're out of time. So thank you again for joining us today and sharing your domain investing experience, my man.
Thank you. I really appreciate being on this show. Thank you so much, Alvin. Have a good one.
Yeah, you too. And thank you, listeners, for tuning in to Kickstart Commerce, where we share search marketing and domain naming strategies to help grow your business. Please subscribe to this podcast via iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, Spotify, or Podbean. Last but not least, please visit kickstartcommerce.com to subscribe to the newsletter sharing tips and tricks about the disciplines of digital strategy. Thanks, and that's all for now.